Hello. So back on the technical stuff now in mastering vlog. Thanks for watching so far. One thing I've noticed is that because I don't move my arms around much, um, all of the suggested thumbnails are like me pulling weird faces, like going. So I'm going to try and use my hands more because it will hopefully, because of voguing then, hopefully make for a better thumbnail. So if you see me wobbling around like an octopus, it's just to try and trick the YouTube algorithms. So, technical video, specific gear stuff, change the vibe. Did a video a couple of days ago about soft clipping and saturation, and I've been doing a big soft clipper test recently. I go through stages of like not changing any of my gear and like freaking out if it even changes slightly, and then technology changes or stuff becomes cheaper or whatever, and I get really into researching stuff, and I go crazy downloading everything and demoing everything and moving my hands again, doing all that kind of stuff. So the thing that I've recently been testing a lot is soft clippers, and to very quickly describe what they do, soft clippers are basically a way of changing the headroom, the overall peak level of digital audio, and the trade-off is that you get harmonic distortion, which is basically added frequencies that weren't there in the first place. I won't go into why, but that's how they work. So different soft clippers work on different material, different genres. Some of them have like a fixed style. Some of them have oversampling. Some of them work in split bands. Some of them work in single bands. So there are lots of different soft clippers out there, and sometimes you find them inside of the other gear. So you might get a plug-in for my phone's ringing. It's very strange because that phone isn't advertised anywhere. So that's probably someone ringing and being very confused, or someone trying to sell me something. Anyway, ignore that. Clip that out. Excuse the pun. So yeah, soft clippers have all their different vibes. You can't really have too many soft clippers as long as you have a good understanding of what they sound like. I'm going to go through three that I use at the moment, and I've decided I'm going to keep and have bought. And I'm going to tell you my practical opinions about where to use them, and maybe give you some advice about testing stuff, or if you're putting together a mastering sort of setup at the moment. The first one is a bit of a classic, but it's a new iteration of it. It's the TC soft clip. Now, the TC soft clip has been used in loads of stuff. Possibly the System 6000 first, which is an old mastering expensive hardware thing with a cool little controller. Behringer, if you're watching, please make a controller for the new TC stuff. I know you won't, but please. And I recently, because they just trashed the price on these little TC Electronic mastering controller plug-in things. I mean, it was so cheap that basically the controller's free. So I thought, whatever, I'll just try it. So I've got the Master, what's it called? The Brickwall HD. I'd previously used the TC limiters a little bit in the MD2 and the M5000, and then on the Power Core, which was the porting of the original System 6000 stuff. And it's very soft. TC's thing is they're about low distortion, which means that often you'll get not massive loudness out of their stuff like you might do if you think about the same amount of gain pushed into it. And also their limiters are very slow, and their compressors are quite slow compared to what you might expect from inside a DAW. But that serves a certain purpose. You've got to bear in mind that TC was a broadcast company and was very popular in classical and acoustic mastering stuff. That was kind of where their market was compared to something like API, which is very much like rock, like hard sounding stuff, and then there's like SSL, and they all kind of have their own markets. They can all be used in different ways, but long story short, the TC stuff is very, very soft, very transparent, but you're not going to get massive amounts of gain reduction out of it. I find that when pushed the TC soft clipper inside the Master X, which is the inside the brick wall, because the Master X has a different soft clipper in it, which I'll come to in a second. Inside the brick wall, which you can currently get for about 83 quid on Amazon, which is just crazy, with this cool little controller. Has a couple of cool functions in it. It's a warmer sounding soft clip. It doesn't really crunch unless you go really crazy with it. But the trade-off is that you're not going to like shave loads of peaks off. I use it quite a bit where you've got an acoustic track or a soundtrack kind of thing where it's basically going 1 dB into a limiter and you're like, could I avoid hitting the limiter? And the TC soft clips like that. It's actually built into the gear in the gain structure that way, so that you can soft clip it on the way in or on the way out before the final limiter and before the final gain. So yeah, that's a very clean, warm, but not particularly loud soft clipping is the way I describe it. The second one is one that I found cruising the internet late at night when I couldn't sleep, which is the Arboreal Audio, I think that's how you say it, Pimax, which from what I understand is basically Sonic's inflator type thing, but modernized and with more control and not loads of money. The Sonic's inflator is a bit of a weird one because when I first tried it, I was just like, this is just an overdrive, right? And you read the blurb for it, it has all this crazy language, make it sound warmer, thicker, deeper, blah, you know, very hyperbolic in a way that's quite annoying, I think, personally, as someone who buys pro audio equipment a lot. And it was quite expensive, and this is when I first started, so about 15 years ago now. I demoed all the Sonic stuff. I ended up getting the Dynamics, which I've still got, which is kind of cool. The limiter I always thought sounded too aggressive. Apparently people like it for that reason, fair enough. But the inflator is basically just a wave shaper slash soft clipper. But it has these clever sort of sliders. They're kind of ahead of its time in the sort of one control, stuff going on behind the hood type thing. But it always had a couple of issues. And I always thought that like it's quite an edgy sounding overdrive, which works on some stuff. Now, it goes from being really expensive to being like really cheap. Like at the time of this video, the Sonic's inflator is like 30 quid or something, or $30. So it's well worth getting. I mean, if I hadn't already got this other thing, I probably would get the inflator just at this point. But this type of soft clipping in its normal stage is quite blunt and quite aggressive. So the inflator can go from sounding quite loud and sort of extra mid-rangey and in your face to sounding like way too much quite quickly. So it's very different to the TC soft clipper, which just gets loud slowly and kind of has a sort of warmer sound to it. It rolls it off, kind of like tape, but not really because tape's a bit more dynamic. But you know, if you're doing an acoustic thing, it's a little bit edgy sounding, and there's all these sort of pingy transients that you don't really need, and you can kind of like transfer that over into the low mid sort of thing. That's kind of how it works. Whereas this Pimax is kind of more of a blunt. It's quite adjustable, but the way that I've got it set up, which is basically quite similar to the inflator with the clip mode on, which is how most people use it in mastering. It's loud. It's on the edge. It's good for big, loud vocal pop stuff that really needs to cut through. And that's kind of what the inflator's famous for as well. There's a couple of bugs at the moment, time of making this video on the Pimax thing, but I'm in contact with them and hopefully that's getting sorted out. It's got a few kind of cool things behind the hood. It's got a linear phase mode and some crossovers you can change. But just doing a test this morning before I made this video, I had them all these different soft clippers set up. And yeah, a lot crunchier, draw a lot of attention to vocals, snare drums, guitars, so good for certain stuff, but probably too rough for other stuff. And the last one I want to talk about is the newfangled Saturate, which is part of their limiter, which they've sort of expanded into a separate plugin. And I bought that when it was on offer recently. And I'm not entirely sure why. I don't know if it's to do with the oversampling or not, but I had it set so it basically looked very similar to a lot of the other plugins that I had for a super soft, like a true soft clip. And it sounded a lot warmer than the others. It sounded one stage warmer, but in a slightly fuzzy way than the TC almost. The TC was a lot cleaner, but I managed to get more loudness out of it, you know, without hitting zero. So again, the newfangled one, it's kind of like a kit. You can change it quite a lot, but I'm using it in a way that like I'm looking for straight soft clipping, up to zero with a little bit of a hard clip at the top, just to, you know, so that you don't get any overs. Something that you can push a master into before a limiter, basically, to try and round off the transients. So that was cool. Quite sort of coloured, a bit more coloured than I thought it was going to be. To be honest, it's kind of been tuned that way, I guess. The limiter has a definite sound to it as well. There's a lot. I mean, I'm still trying to understand the limiter. To be honest, Elevate is the name of the limiter. But between those three, I found I've got a really nice kit. Now, weirdly, Mixbox Online actually mentioned this. The soft clipper in the TC Master X HD, which has its own little controller as well, is actually different. It's actually softer than the soft clip, the normal middle soft clip algorithm on the brick wall. So that was interesting. So on the brick wall, you've got three. You've got hard, which is like a 2-to-1 ratio soft clipper. It's not really a hard clipper. You've got smooth, which is like this, like a super smooth transfer curve that like almost does no clipping whatsoever until you hit it really hard. And then you've got the normal TC soft clip from their brick wall limiter hardware in the System 6000 and PowerCore. And then they've got this other one in Master X. So that's kind of cool. Like there's now, for whatever money I spent, probably like 150 quid or something like that, maybe a bit more, on these two little controllers. I've managed to get these like 4 very usable clippers, soft clippers. So yeah, soft clippers, like they can do so much damage that it's very difficult to just have one soft clipper and be like, oh, I always use this soft clipper before my limiter, or I use this to avoid hard clipping or whatever, because they all sound so different, even though they're really just wave shaping and changing the headroom. So yeah, 3 that I recommend checking out. TC Brick Wall HD, which is a plugin, but you can also get it with the controller for like basically no money, like the price of an impulse purchase on Amazon or whatever. And that's got 3 different clippers in it, but the normal TC soft clip, sort of classic TC soft clip. The Pimax, which is the sort of inflator style wave shaping, loudness, edgy, aggressive type thing that you can get, good for vocal pop music, especially in rock music where you've got a lot more density in the upper mids anyway. And then yeah, the newfangled Saturate, which is an interesting one. It's kind of, it's definitely got its own sound. I can imagine it sounding really good on like heavy bassy stuff. You might take a little bit off the low EQ boost and hit it with that instead, and you might find that you get a bit of extra headroom and you get a bit more oomph. And that sounds closer to me like some of the classic old mastering converters driven hard, where you get this rounding off and this bass, like harmonic distortion kind of thing. A bit like an old Prism converter. I've used them quite a lot. Reminds me of that sound quite a lot. And that's a cool sound. It's just a lot of it's definitely a sound. So you've got to kind of choose. Anyway, let me know what your favourite soft clippers are. If I've missed anything that's brilliant, in the comments. Thanks for watching. I don't get any money out of this, but if TC want to send me some more plugins, please do. I do use all their stuff. Yeah, thanks for watching. Any more ideas? Let me know. Soft clippers, dangerous but good to know. Cheers.